Here's the top 3 lessons I learned while working in a bar during my sobriety. The first lesson I learned was my sobriety was totally dependent on me because nobody's going to get me sober and nobody's going to keep me sober if I don't want to be sober. Now, I can only speak for myself. The way I drank over the years, there was a lot of people that wanted me to stop. And there were times where I thought I wanted to stop, but I didn't because I enjoyed it. I was having fun. At least I thought I was. Or no, I was having fun. I didn't think about it. I did have fun. But as I shared before, the fun brought trouble. And then when the trouble came, that wasn't fun. And I just kept on finding myself in all these weird situations and embarrassing situations. And I was like, man, that's over. But I still like the bar atmosphere. I like the nightlife. And I got back into the bar business, or I got into the bar business when I was single because I got divorced, and an opportunity came up. And at that time, it was to DJ in a club, and I did a video on that one before. And I actually DJ'd in an adult entertainment club, which was a little different for me, totally different for me, but it was interesting because, of course, number one, I was sober. I think I was 3 years sober at the time, maybe 4, going into my 4th year. Doesn't matter. I was sober. And now I'm in an atmosphere with not only a lot of booze, a lot of women, and a lot of, topless women. It wasn't a nude club. It was just topless. So it was different. But I went in with the right mindset, and the mindset was I was going to work, and I was going to get my money, and I was going to get out of there. So it worked out for me. As I've told people in the past who, asked me about, when they quit drinking, was it okay to go to a bar? That's totally up to the individual. I don't like to give anybody any advice of what they should do because early on I had a lot of people telling me what I should and I shouldn't do. I was in AA when people found out that I was going to be working in a club. Some of them kind of freaked out. I can't tell you how many pulled me aside after a meeting and said, Joey, you better be careful. That's a slippery place for you. And I was like, yeah, I appreciate it and everything, but I'm good. Because I understood why I shouldn't put a drink in me. And I really did. I understood what would happen if I did, and I didn't want to go back there, so I was cool with it. I mean, that was it. And I tried to make it simple for me. I didn't want to complicate me working in a bar, and especially that type of atmosphere, by worrying if I'm going to pick up a drink again. I didn't want to drink, so I did it. So that was lesson number 1. I could basically do what I wanted to do because it was all up to me, and that was kind of liberating. It's my choice. It's my choice if I'm going to drink or not, okay? The second thing I learned, which was pretty interesting for me, that it's none of my business what other people do while they're drinking, which, when you flip the tables around, I guess, and you're looking at people behave a certain way because they got alcohol in them, I was in no place to judge anybody, right? They were doing their thing just like I was doing my thing. But it was interesting because many times I would think to myself, oh, man, that was me. Now, I never went to strip clubs when I was drinking. I went to clubs that had live music all the time or, just a regular bar, play some pool, shoot darts or something like that. But I was never into, going to in a strip club or adult entertainment club. That just wasn't my style. And to be honest with you, when I was working in the adult entertainment business, that wasn't anything but a job for me with money. It had a few perks, but we won't talk about those here, but they're not what you're thinking. But, in all honesty, I met a lot of nice people in those clubs, and I also learned something, a little off topic, but a lot of the women that get a bad rap for doing it, um, these were women who had kids, trying to support them the best they can. Again, I'm not to judge anybody. If that's how they wanted to do it, that was their business. And later on, I did a whole video on this, but I stopped being a DJ and I was the general manager of the club. So my prime responsibility at that point was to make sure it was safe. And I kept it safe. And I respected the women that worked there, even though a lot of people would think that, that wasn't the best job for a woman to have. Again, it wasn't my position, but I made it safe for them. Anyways, going back to, what I was talking about me, not judging other people who drank, because I saw it happening all around me all the time. I'd even get people, that want to buy me a drink, and I'd say, no, man, I'm good. I don't drink. And then sometimes I'll tell them my story. Sometimes they didn't. But there have been quite a few times where some of my loyal customers would start to open up to me about, their own drinking. They didn't actually have to tell me. I could see that, they had a problem. But just like I did, justified it all the time. And, some of them had asked, how I did it, and I told them. But like I said, it's an individual choice. And if you want to get sober, you can, but you have to want it. And more importantly, if you want to get sober and you get some time, the main thing is you got to stay sober. My whole spiel was always, I don't drink no matter what, and no matter what means no matter what. I even have a book, Don't Drink or Use No Matter What, and no matter what means no matter. It all boils down to the simplicity of don't drink or use no matter what. If you don't have a drug or alcohol in your system, you got a shot. You got a chance of not screwing up. You got a chance of possibly thinking through some things that you normally wouldn't if you were drinking, if you were high. Now, don't get me wrong. I made some really bad decisions and choices while I was sober, too. The only problem is I got to really take the blame, because at least when I was drinking, I could go, oh, I did what? I said what? I did that? I was drinking. How stupid. Yeah, I don't have anything to blame anymore except myself. So that's something that, you got to live with. You got to live with the consequences, right? You can't blame anything, like for me, my drinking, because it's all on me. And the third lesson that I had to learn was and this is different for everybody, but my lesson was I couldn't get involved with a person who drank. Now, I always thought that it wouldn't bother me, but I dated some women who did drink. And for me, it was a little difficult because I didn't want to judge them. But if they got out of hand, I didn't know how to handle it. I was with this one woman, and we went away for the weekend, and she did, one night we were out listening to some live music, and man, she kept on drinking and drinking. And, I just didn't say anything. But the next day on the way home, I said to her, let me ask you a question. Yesterday or last night, when, you were pretty into, the alcohol, and she knew it. I said, how would you react if I said, you got to slow it down? You were getting out of hand. And as I'm driving, I could tell she looked at me and she said, don't you ever tell me that. And I said, okay, it's good to know. So that didn't last too long. And it's nothing against her. It was nothing against her. She's allowed to do what she wants. But for me, it was a little too much. And after that, I've dated women who have a couple of cocktails, and maybe once in a while they maybe get a little buzzed or something, but, nothing overboard. So I've learned over time that, I don't mind people drinking, even if I go out with some buddies. If they get trashed, they get trashed, and I'll give them a ride home or whatever. It doesn't bother me. But my circle of people, I'm careful with. And if I'm dating somebody and I find that they drink a little too much, and it's not, the drink is not what makes me uncomfortable, I guess it would be their behavior. I watch. I'm very careful of, who I put myself around. But I'm older now too. Everybody's different, and that's the one thing about, getting sober and staying sober is you got to do what works for you. There's too many people out there, in my opinion, they're in these support groups, which are good, but there comes a time when you got to get out and you got to live your life. If you're constantly worried about picking up a drink, so that means you've got to go to maybe this meeting or this support group or that support group, or you got to be in contact with a bunch of people all the time because you're afraid you might pick up a drink or a drug, then you got to slow down and you really need to think about you. Why are you still afraid after you've got some time to go out and live your life? Because if you're afraid of picking up a drink again or picking up a drug because you're going to be in a certain situation, then you still don't understand right here inside your heart why you don't want to pick up that substance again. And that's what you have to come to. Because, see, once you do that, again, this is my opinion, but I've talked with a lot of people and I think a lot like a lot of people, that once you come to that understanding with any issue that you have in your life and that you want to change, you really got to want it, and you got to know it's the best thing for you, and nothing's going to make you, go back to your old ways. I know for me, at least knock on wood, I've been through a lot of crap, a lot of bad situations, a lot of fun times, which I used to drink. I didn't drink through them. A lot of sad times where I used to drink. I didn't drink through them. I just got through them without the alcohol. And you can do it too. I totally think that anybody can get through their life without a drug or without alcohol if they really want to. But it's totally up to you. So these 3 lessons, that's just something like, that I learned. Number 1, my sobriety is all up to me. Number 2, I can't judge anybody. I can't, I can observe what they're doing, but it's none of my business. And number 3, I'm careful who I hang out with. Not because I'm afraid that I'm going to go back into my old ways, but it's just not what I want at this time of my life. Who knows? But anyways, remember, don't drink or use no matter what, and no matter what means no matter what. Figure out your why you want to stay sober. And if you're not sober and, you've been thinking about it, go to a support group. I'm not going to tell you which one. I'm going to watch some of my other videos. I'll tell you, I did go to AA. I don't push anybody to go to AA. In my book, I tell people I went to AA. But after a while, it was time for me to leave. Other people don't leave. That's their business. Again, I don't judge them. I live my life. I don't live anybody else's life. And I don't want anybody to tell me how I should get sober and stay sober. Because there's a bunch of people, millions of people that got sober and clean their own way, and they came out okay. So who am I to tell somebody? I'm just here maybe offering a little suggestion. So until the next time, this is Papa Joey. Don't drink or use no matter what. And no matter what means no matter what. Bye-bye.